Ilia Topuria versus Alexander Volkanovski is going to be happening in less than a week now. And I want to use this video to just go over the levels of confidence and delusion of Ilia Topuria, and going over a few case studies in the UFC's history over how this could or might not go, okay? Like, Ilia Topuria, to brush you up, I'm just going to assume you don't know what's been going on. Ilia Topuria has been going on a press tirade with a new level of confidence. Like, the whole undefeated UFC world champion in his Instagram bio, and in this case, Twitter bio, that's like slightly above normal. Like, don't get me wrong, doing that before a fight is kind of wild. Mostly because if you fail, then you kind of have to go through that shame of deleting that, and even Volkanovski said something about that. No, I'm talking about the fact that Ilia Topuria is producing a movie called A Road to the Belt that doesn't even have an ending and is set to release right after UFC 298. Like, that's a hilarious amount of... Now, that's just delusion, okay? Like, say it's a robbery. Like, say Ilia does win and it's like a robbery decision. Are you still going to put that in? Like, never mind if he loses. If it's just, like... There's other stuff. Okay. Ilia Topuria also believes that if he wins here, he's going to headline UFC Spain against Conor McGregor. Headlining UFC Spain, at the end of the day, is not that crazy. And listen, there is a scenario where Ilia Topuria walks away from this as like top 5 biggest stars in the UFC. Ilia Topuria is a big star. Like, it might not seem it here, but bro has the Georgian crowd, which is like Diet Dagestani levels of devotion, and the Spain crowd. The Spain crowd is underrated. The fact is they just don't have a lot of stars, so the fact that they got Ilia Topuria coming in here, even though, yes, Ilia's technically born Georgian, Spain's just happy to have a title contender. That's really what it is. I actually thought Ilia Topuria was just from Spain altogether, but with the level of fandom that he gets from them. Making a movie, thinks he's going to be fighting Conor McGregor next, has told Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, and Yair Rodriguez to just retire because he will never give them another title shot for the rest of their career, and saying that Sean O'Malley will be on the prelims of his Conor McGregor fight. Let me tell you, Ilia, how you can become a superstar. You need to beat Volkanovski, obviously enough. You lose to Volkanovski, bro, you might as well just go underneath the rock and, disappear for the next couple of years. Rejoin the UFC under a different surname, this time just representing Georgia. Like, I'm not even kidding. Just become Merab Dvalishvili Part 2. But if you do beat Volkanovski, you're going to have to fight Volkanovski again. Absolute best case scenario, continue your beef with Sean O'Malley, target a double champ fight with Sean O'Malley. Because let me tell you the situation that we're in if you haven't noticed. The UFC gives Chito Vera a title shot against Sean O'Malley. Does not deserve it. Corey Sandhagen beat him. Chito, I'm not going to say had a boring fight. Did not have a championship-worthy performance to get a title shot. That's what ended up happening. If Chito never beat Sean O'Malley, he would not be fighting for a title. I don't think that's a controversial take. Corey Sandhagen should be fighting for the title right now. The UFC bantamweight division is looking like this. I think Sean O'Malley's going to beat Chito. I would be pretty surprised if Chito wins. Would it be funny? Yes, it would be very funny because you can't do another rematch. But I think Sean O'Malley's going to beat Chito by a fairly boring decision. I think then the UFC is going to be looking at either... Let me name you the big 3 of who can be fighting for a title next. Henry Cejudo, if he beats Merab Dvalishvili. Merab Dvalishvili, if he beats Cejudo. Or just do Corey Sandhagen. Absolute worst case scenario, they will do Corey Sandhagen. That's if Merab beats Cejudo. I'm telling you this right now. The UFC will never give Merab Dvalishvili a title shot. Listen, part of it's his fault. I'm not going to lie to you. Part of it is his fault. The fact is, bro was already offered. And for anybody who says, show me the actual quote of which he said that, if Dana White says he offered you a title shot multiple times, and you haven't immediately gone out denying that you were ever... Because here's the thing. If Dana White offers you a title shot, and he says he offered you a title shot and he didn't, what's stopping you from just going public with that? What I think happened is, after Aljamain lost the title. They offered something to Merab. And worst case scenario, the UFC probably knew Merab wasn't going to say yes, but at the same time, bro should have said yes. Now he's in a situation where if Cejudo beats him, they're going to bury him in the rankings. If Cejudo beats Merab, sorry Corey, I could see them doing Cejudo versus O'Malley just because that is slightly more marketable than Corey versus O'Malley. They're only going to do Corey if Merab wins. But what I think they're going to do, sidestepping all of that, they're going to do Sean O'Malley versus Ilia Topuria if Ilia wins. I know it's not deserved double champ fight, it isn't. The only reason I'm behind it is I think Ilia does beat O'Malley. Like, Ilia really went from the dude that got a water bottle thrown at him from Paddy. And I remember the Paddy fans saying that Paddy Pimblett would submit Ilia Topuria in an MMA fight. Brother, how far have we gone? Ilia Topuria went from fighting some unranked 155er on that night to we're really talking about him becoming one of the biggest superstars in the sport if he can be the GOAT of 145. Like, say what you want about Paddy Pimblett and Ilia Topuria. All I'm saying is Ilia's gone more with less. But is this hype gonna prove to be delusional? Let's look at some other fighters that had all the hype in the world and failed it. Let's go over one of my favorites, Darren Till. Darren Till comes into the UFC. I'm trying to remember the quote. I believe he was supposed to be the Conor McGregor of the UK. Comes into the UFC, and here's the thing. Slightly good can. Donald Cerrone. Here's the thing. A lot of people will get mad if you call Donald Cerrone. I'm not saying Donald Cerrone's a can. He's a good gatekeeper. Okay? Probably one of the better gatekeepers in the UFC. They give him a tough fight in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And he wins. Fair to him. This was a fast track up to the title. And then they throw him right against Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley was the guy that ended the hype of Darren Till. That's what ended up happening. And I'm worried we're going to have this with Ilia. Because it would be a shame to have Ilia, after everything he said, just lose the hype. I'm actually kind of in favor of Ilia beating Volk. And I love Volkanovski, but at the same time, Volkanovski's getting old. He's already regarded as the featherweight GOAT, unless you're talking about Jose Aldo. Like, if there's a time to passing of the torch, it would probably be Ilia Topuria. And then goes up to Tyron Woodley, loses to Jorge Masvidal, wins against Calvin Gastelum, Robert Whittaker. Like, here's the problem. When you get to the point of delusion that you were with Darren Till, that you believed it was like your divine goal to become champion, and confidence you need to become a champion. Like, there's no champions that have made it in this sport that didn't have a certain level of delusion or whatever, mental disability. You know what I'm trying to say. But the problem is once you reach a certain point of stardom, you have to fight people that maybe aren't there because they're stars, but are there because they're actually good. Like, Darren Till fought cans until he couldn't fight cans anymore. The entire end of his career is actually kind of a murder's row. Sean O'Malley, I actually think, took the smartest route here. Bro fought nobody but cans until he had to fight Petr Yan. Okay, Pedro Munoz. At that point, I would say a good gatekeeper. Pedro Munoz, from what I've seen, how the UFC likes to do things now is it's can. If he loses, then you have to fight 3 more cans, and then we give you a good opponent. It's 3 cans, a gatekeeper. You beat a gatekeeper, a ranked opponent, then we give you a title shot. That's from what I've seen the UFC does now and how they'll propel a superstar. Beats Petr Yan, fair enough. Split decision, bro won. They throw him right into a title shot. Russ Aljamain Sterling, and bro wins the title. That could have gone so badly, because if Sean O'Malley lost to Aljamain, the hype's gone. Paddy Pimblett believed he was going to be a bigger star than Conor McGregor when he came into the UFC, and I think the UFC bought into it. And listen, can, gatekeeper. 3 cans a gatekeeper. Jared Gordon was a robbery. I'm sorry. Like, there are very few fights in this sport that I would actually call a robbery. I didn't think Strickland vs. Dricus was a robbery. Jared Gordon versus Paddy Pimblett is one of the few robberies in the sport because Jared Gordon did do enough to win. And if you have to make the excuse, this is what I've noticed. If there's a close fight and somebody that the UFC wants to win ends up winning. So here are the two examples that I'll give. Jared Gordon and Paddy Pimblett, Dominic Reyes and John Jones. What they'll say for both of those is that never leave it in the hands of the judges, which is kind of wild because the champion also left it in the hands of the judges. And two, the later rounds count more than the first rounds. I agree with that, but at the same time, if it's not written into the rule book, then let's not take that at face value. I hold that rule that the later rounds count more than the first rounds in the same regard as I hold that people say, if you want to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. That shouldn't be a thing. And the fifth round of a championship fight doesn't count more than the first round. Dominic Reyes, in my mind, won 3 of the 5 rounds. Jared Gordon won round 2, did enough to win round 1 and round 2, loses round 3. And Dana White won't shut up about Jared Gordon took his foot off the gas in the 3rd round and just didn't do enough to win. Don't leave it in the hands of the judges. Paddy Pimblett didn't win that fight, bro. And now we're in a situation, to wrap this all back, he beats Tony Ferguson, now he has to fight a ranked opponent. What I think they're going to do is Renato Moicano, because Renato Moicano is one of the few people that has the charisma to promote a fight with Paddy Pimblett. That's another problem with Paddy Pimblett when you're trying to promote somebody like that. Paddy Pimblett is a decent fight promoter. The problem is you have to put him against people that can also do a good fight promotion to sell the illusion of superstardom. That's what the UFC likes doing. Like, the casual fan looked at Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett as Tony Ferguson, one of the best lightweights, fighting an up-and-comer in Paddy Pimblett. Never mind the 7-fight losing streak. One that just happened, Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer was talking about him having a documentary made about his life right before the fight. A documentary might be the new curse. It might be. Like, it's now become, it's not just the cover curse, the Chael curse, the Joe Rogan curse. No, it's now become, hey, I'm going to have a documentary made on my life right before a fight, and you end up losing. He just lost to Jack Hermanson. That was just last night. But, I mean, if we're looking at, this one kind of complicates it a little bit. I'm not going to count Dana White Contender Series, because, of course, they're just about, you're either a can or really good. Can. Jared Mirsart, decent can. Abdul, unranked. Give him a journeyman. Same thing. Unranked, or can, journeyman. Loses to Jack Hermanson. The hype is not quite dead. We're not like Mike Mallet, Jeff Neal. Mike Mallet, Neil Magny levels of dead hype. We're kind of in, like, we need to do some reconvening over what we're going to do with Joe Pyfer. So, when we're looking at how this has been going historically, when we're talking about, like, Ilia Topuria being able to beat a Volkanovski, when we look at other people like Paddy Pimblett and Darren Till, let's actually look up Ilia Topuria's Tapology. 14-0, 26 years old. I believe he just turned 27, which is wild, by the way. And one reason that I do believe Ilia Topuria will become a champion is he's just so young. He's going to outlast everybody else. Let's look at his record. Comes into the UFC versus Yusuf Zalal. Ryan Hall was actually really good. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. Ryan Hall he was a tricky matchup, because here's the thing. If you were off by just a little second with your grappling, he's going to heel hook you, and it's just not a fun loss. Ryan Hall had trouble finding opponents because people didn't want to take the risk of losing. Gives a canceled fight with Movsar Evloev, which is kind of wild, by the way. That would have been a fun fight. Jai Herbert, not terrible. Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell is slightly above can level. I love Bryce Mitchell, too. Bryce Mitchell's not becoming a champion. I'm sorry. And then we give him Josh Emmett. Like, don't get me wrong. We gave him a few more cans, and from how... I actually see a lot of similarities between Ilia Topuria's Tapology and Sean O'Malley. And we saw how Sean O'Malley turned out. So all I'm saying, I'm going to make a full video breaking down the tape and my prediction for this, but from the looks of it, I'm thinking history's going to repeat itself. I think Ilia Topuria. Confidence or delusion, I think there's a certain amount of both. I would favor Ilia Topuria to beat Alexander Volkanovski. And bro, would that be wild. 15-0, 27 years of age, beats Alexander Volkanovski. And don't get me wrong, it'll be sad for Volk fans. But damn, would that be a pretty good story. And then after that, Ilia. Market for a fight with Sean O'Malley. At UFC Spain, headliner. You become a superstar. The UFC has been wanting to go to Spain for the past year and a half now, and now they're actually talking about going there near the end of this year or early next year. You're the champion. You can do that. Volkanovski has to get a rematch, but there's nothing stopping you from fighting Sean O'Malley in the meantime, and that is something that I think they would do. But there you go. That's my little spiel talking about Ilia Topuria. It's just a subject that I've been looking to rant on in like a longer form other than like a TikTok. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. What type of video do you want me to make? Tier list, video or otherwise, put it in the comment section below. Thank you for your support. It actually means a lot to me. And with that out of the way, adios, guys.